"Hold the execution!" a young girl exclaimed as she burst into the room where the millionaire was about to be put to death. Then, when she presented a cardboard box to the guards, something incredible unfolded. The sound of footsteps echoed through the cold penitentiary corridor, mingling with the distant clang of closing cell doors. 30-year-old business mogul Bennett Sterling walked escorted by two guards, his shackled hands trembling slightly as he headed toward the room where he would spend his final hours. His striking features, once gracing the covers of business magazines, now bore the marks of despair and exhaustion from 18 long months of incarceration. The fortune he had amassed over years of investing in the stock market seemed a cruel irony. All his wealth in dollars, his stock investments, even his Bitcoin holdings meant nothing when he was about to pay for the most horrific crime a man could commit, the disappearance of his own family. He repeated to himself, as he had done thousands of times since his arrest, that he was innocent, that he had never laid a hand on his wife or his two young children. But the evidence against him was overwhelming, meticulously arranged in a way that left no room for doubt in the jury's mind. The preparation room was small and claustrophobic, with dark grey walls that seemed to suck all hope from the atmosphere. A metal table occupied the center, surrounded by a few uncomfortable chairs where his lawyers would make their last desperate attempt to save him. The smell of disinfectant was strong, mixing with the odor of fear emanating from his own skin. He sat down heavily, the shackles making a metallic noise against the table. His eyes, once bright with the confidence of someone who dominated the business world, were now empty, without the slightest spark of hope. All his capital, all his wealth built with so much effort, had failed to buy his freedom when he needed it most. He remembered the days when his biggest concern was tracking the profitability of his funds or calculating the dividends of his stocks. How insignificant those problems seemed now, faced with the prospect of not only losing his life, but of dying carrying the guilt for a crime he did not commit. It was then that the sepulchral silence of the room was shattered by a crash. The door swung open violently, and a small figure burst into the room, leaving the guards completely baffled. It was a girl who appeared to be around 2 years old, although she was actually 4. Her extreme fragility, the result of months living on the streets without proper care. She carried a torn and dirty cardboard box, clutching it to her chest as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. Her large, frightened eyes scanned the room until they met those of the millionaire, and then she cried out in a desperate voice that echoed through the walls, "I know you didn't do it. I saw everything. I can prove it." The guards moved quickly to restrain the child, but she dodged them with surprising agility for someone so small and seemingly frail. Her torn and dirty clothes told the story of months of neglect, and her disheveled hair framed a face that carried a fierce determination. "I was there when she left," she continued shouting, her words tumbling out in a rush of urgency. "She wasn't hurt. She ran away. I saw her leave with a man and the kids." Bennett jumped up abruptly, the shackles restricting his movements, but his eyes now shone with something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The girl approached him, extending the cardboard box with her dirty little hands. "She dropped this when she was running," the girl said, her voice now lower, almost a whisper. "I kept it because I thought someday someone might need it." One of the guards finally managed to grab the child by the shoulders, but she didn't resist. Her eyes remained fixed on Bennett's face, as if she were trying to convey all the truth she carried through that intense gaze. "Nobody believes me because I'm just a street kid," she said, tears beginning to run down her dirty cheeks. "But I know what I saw. I know you didn't do anything bad to your family." The silence that followed was charged with tension. The guards exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to proceed in the face of this unprecedented situation. Bennett felt his heart beating so hard that it seemed to echo throughout the room. "How did you get in here?" he asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I've been trying to find someone who would listen for a long time," the girl replied. I tried talking to cops, to important people, but nobody cares what a street kid has to say. The cardboard box she was carrying was crumpled and stained, but there was something inside that made a soft noise when she moved. Bennett's eyes fixed on that object, and for the first time in 18 months, he felt that perhaps there was a chance, however small, that the truth would finally come to light. The guards finally managed to contain the situation, but not before Bennett's lawyer came running down the corridors of the penitentiary. The ambitious 45-year-old man had seen the commotion through the security cameras and immediately realized that this child could represent the opportunity for fame he so craved in his career. "Wait!" he shouted, adjusting his expensive suit as he approached. "This child may have relevant information for the case. We need to hear her before removing her from here." The little beggar girl looked at the lawyer with suspicion. During her months on the streets, she had learned to recognize when adults had ulterior motives, and something in the gleam in that man's eyes made her uneasy. Still, she clutched the cardboard box to her chest and repeated her story with an impressive determination for someone so small. "I lived in an abandoned house near his mansion," she said, pointing to Bennett. "Every night I saw the lights of the big house and dreamed of having a family like that, until one night I heard screams and saw strange movement." The lawyer pulled up a chair and crouched down to get on the girl's level, his eyes shining with growing interest. He knew he needed to be careful not to scare the child, but he also couldn't waste this unique opportunity. "Tell me exactly what you saw, honey," he said, using the gentlest tone he could muster. The girl took a deep breath, as if she were preparing to relive a painful moment. "It was very late, and I was trying to sleep when I heard a car arriving. But it wasn't his car." She pointed again to Bennett. "It was another one, black and big. Then I saw the pretty woman leaving the house with 2 little kids." "And how did you know it was his wife?" the lawyer asked, beginning to take mental notes. "Because I had seen her other times. She always wore nice clothes and had long, shiny hair, but that night she looked very scared. She was looking back all the time, like someone was chasing her." Bennett leaned forward as far as the shackles allowed, each word of the girl echoing in his heart like a symphony of hope. During all those months in prison, he had questioned himself 1,000 times about what had really happened that fateful night. "There was blood in the house when I got home," he murmured. "Signs of a struggle. How is that possible if she fled willingly?" The girl looked at him with her big, sad eyes. "Because they made it look like there was a fight. The man who came to pick her up came back alone after they left. He went into the house and stayed there for a long time. When he left, he was carrying some things." The lawyer felt his pulse quicken. If that story were true, it meant that the entire crime scene had been staged. But he also knew that the testimony of a street kid would be extremely difficult to validate before a court. "Can you describe this man?" he asked. The girl closed her eyes, as if she were accessing a library of memories in her mind. "He was tall, taller than you," she said, looking at Bennett. "He had dark hair and a small scar here," she touched her own forehead. "And he limped a little on his left leg." Bennett felt a chill run down his spine. That description matched perfectly to his wife's brother, a troubled man with whom she had always had a complicated relationship. He had even lent money to his brother-in-law to get out of some messes related to gambling debts. "Are you absolutely sure of what you're saying?" the lawyer asked, his voice charged with urgency. "I never lie about important things," the girl replied, with a seriousness that contrasted with her fragile appearance. "My mum always said that lying about serious things was the worst sin that existed." It was then that she carefully opened the cardboard box. Inside, wrapped in pieces of dirty cloth, was an object that made Bennett's heart stop for a moment. The pearl necklace he had given his wife on their first wedding anniversary. It was a unique piece with a special pendant that he had made exclusively for her. "She dropped this when she was running to the car," the girl said, carefully extending the necklace. I thought she was going to come back to get it, but she never did." The lawyer examined the jewel with expert eyes. He knew that necklace well, as he had been present when Bennett had bought it years ago, back when he was only taking care of commercial contracts for the company. The value of the piece was considerable, not something someone would easily abandon unless they were in a situation of extreme desperation. "Is there anything else you remember from that night?" he asked. The girl nodded slowly. Before getting into the car, the pretty woman looked at the house and started crying. She looked very sad, like she didn't want to leave. The man with the scar had to push her into the car. Those words were like a punch in the gut to Bennett. His wife hadn't fled willingly. She'd been forced to leave her home, her belongings, her life. But why? And where were his children now? "There's one strange thing I remember too," the girl continued, her voice getting lower. "After they left, I kept watching the house. About an hour later, another car arrived. It was his car." She pointed to Bennett. "But he wasn't driving. It was the same man with the scar who was driving." The puzzle was beginning to form in the lawyer's mind. If that version of events were true, it meant that Bennett's brother-in-law had not only forced his sister's escape, but had also used the businessman's car to create even more false evidence against him. "Where were you living when you saw all this?" he asked. "In the old house across the street. There was a hole in the wall where I could see everything without anyone seeing me." The girl paused, her eyes filling with tears. "After the cops took him away," she looked at Bennett, "bad men came and knocked down my little house. They said I couldn't stay there." Bennett felt a mixture of gratitude and guilt consuming his chest. This brave child had been the only witness to his innocence, and as a result, she had lost even the small shelter she called home. "Why didn't you tell this to someone before?" the lawyer asked. "I tried," the girl exclaimed, her voice breaking. "I went to the police station, but the cop said that kids don't understand anything and sent me away. I tried talking to other adults, but everyone only saw a dirty girl and didn't want to listen." At that moment, the door of the room opened again, and a stern 50-year-old woman marched in with authority. It was the cruel stepmother who ran the local orphanage, and her eyes flashed with fury when she saw the girl. "There you are, you little pest," she said in a harsh voice. "How many times have I told you not to leave the orphanage without permission? And now I find out you're here telling lies to these important people." The girl cringed instinctively, fear replacing the determination in her eyes. Bennett watched the scene with a growing understanding that the battle for the truth was just beginning. The tension in the room intensified as the cruel stepmother grabbed the girl's arm with unnecessary force. Bennett watched in horror as the woman's fingers left red marks on the child's fragile skin, and a fury that he hadn't felt in months began to burn in his chest. "Let her go," he said, his voice laden with an authority that even the shackles couldn't diminish. "You're hurting a child?" The stepmother laughed scornfully. "A man convicted of murder giving moral lessons? How ironic." She pulled the girl harder. "This child is a constant problem. She lives inventing fantastical stories to get attention. Don't believe a word she said." The lawyer stood up quickly, realizing that he was about to lose the only chance to save his client. "Excuse me, ma'am. This child may have relevant information for a case of extreme importance. You can't just take her away like that." "Yes, I can," the stepmother retorted, her eyes flashing with malice. "I am legally responsible for her, and I can guarantee that this liar will be duly punished for leaving without permission and bothering important people with her fantasies." The girl began to struggle, tears streaming down her face. "They're not lies. I saw everything. Please, let me tell the whole truth." "Shut your mouth," the stepmother shouted, raising her hand as if she were going to hit the child. It was then that something extraordinary happened. Bennett, even in shackles, managed to place himself between the woman and the girl, using his body as a shield. His eyes, which had been empty for months, now shone with a fierce determination. "If you touch her, I swear I will use every last cent of my fortune to destroy your life," he said, his voice low but charged with real threat. "There may not be much time left for me, but I still have enough resources to ensure that you pay for any violence against this child." The stepmother hesitated. She knew of Bennett's wealth, his stock market holdings, and his real estate assets. Even convicted, he still controlled investments that could easily finance an investigation into her practices at the orphanage. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, seizing the moment, this child has just become a potential witness in a federal case. Any attempt at intimidation or retaliation will be seen as obstruction of justice. The girl took advantage of the distraction and broke free from the stepmother's grip, running to hide behind Bennett. Even through the shackles and the desperate situation, she felt a strange sense of security in the presence of that man who everyone said was a criminal. "I know you," said the stepmother, pointing an accusing finger at the child. "Since you arrived at the orphanage, you haven't stopped telling that crazy story. Nobody believes it because we know you have serious mental problems." "Mental problems?" repeated the lawyer, his expression becoming even more serious. "Photographic memory. The doctors said it's a rare condition that makes her remember details that shouldn't be important to a normal child. That's why she invents these elaborate stories." Bennett and his lawyer exchanged glances. Far from being a problem, that revelation could be exactly what they needed. A child with photographic memory would be able to remember details that an average adult would easily forget. "You mean she has the ability to recall events with extraordinary accuracy?" asked the lawyer. "It's a curse," said the stepmother bitterly. "She remembers every little detail of every day, and she gets obsessed with things she saw. That's why no family wants to adopt her. Who wants a child who never forgets anything?" The irony of the situation did not go unnoticed by Bennett. The very condition that made the girl unadoptable could be exactly what saved his life. He crouched down to get on the child's level, ignoring the discomfort of the shackles. "Can you remember any other details from that night?" he asked gently. The girl nodded vigorously. "I remember everything. The license plate number of the black car, the color of the dress the pretty lady was wearing, even what the man with the scar said on the phone." "He talked on the phone?" the lawyer asked, interested. "Yes. He called someone after he put the family in the car, said that everything was going according to plan and that the sucker would never know what hit him." Bennett felt his blood run cold. Every word of the girl confirmed that he had been the victim of an elaborate conspiracy. But he still didn't understand the motive. Why would his brother-in-law do something so extreme? The stepmother, realizing that she was losing control of the situation, changed her strategy. "Even if she's telling the truth about some details, you can't trust her. She's just an orphaned child, uneducated, without family. Who's going to believe her word against physical evidence?" "The physical evidence may have been fabricated," the lawyer said. "And what about the necklace she brought? How could a street kid get such a valuable piece of jewelry if it wasn't exactly as she described?" The stepmother had no answer for that. She looked at the pearl necklace that was still on the table, and for the first time, her confidence began to waver. It was then that the girl did something that no one expected. She approached the stepmother, and in her small but firm voice said, "I know why you don't want me to tell the truth. You get money to take care of me, don't you? If I leave the orphanage, you lose that income." The expression of shock on the stepmother's face confirmed the child's suspicion. The lawyer quickly noted this information mentally, realizing that he had found yet another motivation to silence the witness. "Besides," continued the girl, "you always said that I would never be adopted because I'm too much trouble. But if I help this nice man, maybe he'll let me stay with him." Bennett's heart ached when he heard those words. The child's innocence and hope contrasted drastically with the cruelty of the world that surrounded her. For the first time in months, he felt something beyond despair. He felt purpose. "If I can prove my innocence," he said, looking directly into the girl's eyes, "I promise that I will take care of you. You will never have to live in a place where you are not wanted again." The stepmother laughed scornfully. Promises from a condemned man. What value can that have? But the girl smiled for the first time since entering the room. It was a small, shy smile, but loaded with a hope that had been almost extinguished by months of abandonment and cruelty. "I'm going to help you," she said, shaking Bennett's hand with her small hands. "I'm going to tell everything I saw, all the details, until people believe the truth." The lawyer watched that scene with a mixture of admiration and calculation. He knew that he would have a brutal legal battle ahead, but now he had something he didn't have before. A witness willing to fight for the truth, no matter the consequences. "We're going to need time to properly document her testimony," he said to the guards, "and protection. If she really saw what she claims to have seen, she may be in danger." The stepmother took a step back, clearly uncomfortable with the way the situation was turning out. "This is ridiculous. You're turning the fantasies of a troubled child into something bigger than they really are." But Bennett was no longer listening. For the first time in 18 months, he felt that there was a real chance of finding his family again and clearing his name. And all thanks to a brave little girl who no one had wanted to listen to. The question that now haunted him was, how long would it take for the truth to come to light, and would his family be safe until then? The months that followed tested both Bennett and the girl in ways that neither of them could have imagined. The legal process dragged on with excruciating slowness, while each passing day brought new obstacles and disturbing revelations. The first major discovery came when the lawyer gained access to the security cameras of a store near the mansion. The images, although grainy, confirmed the presence of the black car described by the girl on the night of the disappearance. More importantly, they clearly showed Bennett's brother-in-law driving the victim's vehicle hours later, exactly as the child had reported. But every victory came at a high price. The girl began to receive anonymous threats, notes left in her room at the orphanage, with frightening messages that warned her to stop telling lies. The stepmother, far from protecting her, seemed pleased with the terror that consumed the child. "Maybe now you'll learn to keep your mouth shut," she said one morning, after the girl woke up trembling from a recurring nightmare where masked men chased her through the dark streets. Bennett, from his cell, suffered in a different but equally intense way. Each letter he received from his lawyer brought progress mixed with setbacks. Crucial evidence began to disappear mysteriously from police files. Witnesses who could corroborate the girl's story suddenly changed their versions or simply refused to speak. It was during this period that an unexpected figure entered their lives. The kind prison nurse, a 50-year-old woman with gentle eyes and calloused hands, had lost her own 4-year-old daughter in an accident years ago. Something in Bennett's determination to protect the girl touched a sensitive chord in her wounded heart. "You really believe you're innocent, don't you?" she asked one afternoon, while checking his blood pressure during a routine medical appointment. "I know I am," he replied, his eyes showing a conviction that months of imprisonment had not been able to break. "And that brave child is the only person willing to fight for the truth." The nurse nodded slowly. "I've been following the case through the newspapers. It's strange how certain evidence keeps disappearing. What she didn't say at that moment but would later find out was that Bennett's brother-in-law had powerful connections in the city, men who owed him favors and who were willing to turn a blind eye to certain irregularities in exchange for forgiveness of debts related to their gambling addictions. Meanwhile, the girl faced her own demons. Her fragile health deteriorated rapidly under the weight of constant stress. The sleepless nights, the recurring nightmares, and the constant psychological pressure were taking a terrible toll on her little body. "Why don't you give up?" the stepmother asked one morning, observing the deep dark circles under the child's eyes. "That man is going to die anyway. Your stubbornness is only making you suffer more." But the girl, even in her extreme fragility, maintained an unwavering determination. "Because he is a good person who is suffering for something he didn't do," she replied, her voice weak but firm, "and because he promised he's going to take care of me if I help him." It was then that the most devastating twist of all came to light. During one of the deposition sessions, the girl revealed a detail that she had kept to herself for fear of not being believed. Inside the cardboard box, hidden under the torn lining, was a small digital recording that Bennett's wife had dropped along with the necklace. "I didn't know what it was at first," the girl said, her hands trembling as she handed over the small device. "I only found out when I pressed the button by accident. It has the pretty woman's voice speaking." The lawyer and the investigators gathered in a quiet room to listen to the recording. The voice of Bennett's wife echoed through the room, charged with fear and despair. "If something happens to me, I want you to know that my husband is innocent. My brother is forcing me to run away with the children. He said he will hurt my children if I don't steal the money from the investments and disappear. He has forged evidence against my husband to make sure that no one will look for us. I love my husband and never wanted to abandon him, but I can't risk the lives of my babies." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, after months of struggle, they had definitive proof of Bennett's innocence. But the recording also revealed something even more disturbing. His wife and children were not dead, but prisoners of a desperate and dangerous man. "Where could they be now?" asked the lawyer, his voice charged with renewed urgency. The girl closed her eyes, accessing her photographic memory with intense concentration. "The man with the scar said something about a house in the countryside when he was on the phone. He said that they would be safe on the farm until everything cooled down. With this information, the authorities were able to track down a rural property registered in the name of one of the brother-in-law's accomplices. When they arrived at the scene, they found Bennett's wife and his 2 children living in precarious conditions, but alive and relatively well. The family reunion took place in the prison itself, moments before Bennett's official release. When he saw his wife and children again, after 18 months of forced separation, he cried, as he hadn't cried since childhood. His fortune, his investments, all his stock holdings and material possessions seemed insignificant compared to that moment. "I knew you were innocent," his wife whispered through tears. "Every day I prayed that someone would discover the truth." But the most moving moment happened when the girl was brought in to meet the family she had helped to reunite. She was even more fragile, the effort of months fighting for the truth having taken a heavy toll on her delicate health. "This is the little heroine who saved our family," said Bennett, kneeling down to get on the child's level. "And now she's going to be part of our family too." Bennett's wife looked at the girl with eyes full of gratitude and instant maternal love. "You are very brave," she said, extending her arms to the child. "You will never have to face the world alone again." The couple's 2 children, a 6-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl, looked at their new sister with curiosity and immediate acceptance. For them, anyone who had helped bring their dad back was automatically part of the family. The adoption process was quick, facilitated by the gratitude of a judicial system that recognized the debt they owed to the girl's courage. The stepmother from the orphanage tried to create obstacles, but she found that fighting against a man with unlimited resources and personal motivation was a losing battle. 6 months later, the small family of 5 lived in a new house, far from the city where so much pain had happened. Bennett had sold much of his assets and liquidated several fund applications to start a simpler life, focused on what really mattered. The girl, now healthy and flourishing under the loving care of her new family, still occasionally suffered from nightmares about her days on the streets. But whenever she woke up scared, she found loving arms ready to comfort her and gentle voices whispering that she was safe. "You saved not only my life," Bennett said to her one night after calming her down after a nightmare. "You saved our entire family. And now we're going to spend the rest of our lives making sure you never feel alone or scared again." The child smiled, nestling against the chest of the man who had become her father. "I knew you were a good person from the first moment," she murmured. "That's why I needed to help you." As the family slept peacefully in their new home, the girl dreamed no more of dark streets and abandonment, but of birds flying free through the blue sky, finally having found the loving nest she had always sought.